Welcome to the CenterPoint Podcast, where nursing and law unite.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the CenterPoint Podcast with Jacquelyn Maki. I'm Matt Skye, and today we'll be delving into the world of legal nurse consulting, unpacking the mysteries of complex medical issues and their legal implications. Jackie, thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you, Matt. It's always good to talk to you.
So let's get into a role explanation. Can you describe the role of a legal nurse consultant and what unique value they bring to legal cases?
So a legal nurse consultant is a nurse, registered nurse with many different backgrounds that decides at some point that they want to help attorneys. And so there are many different programs they can take. And what the programs do, they give us insight into the legal world. So we already know medicine, but we need to know just enough about legal to speak their language and know how we can help them. And so that's what we do. We take these courses. And then with legal nurse consulting, there are numerous ways that you can help attorneys. Some actually will hire legal nurse consultants to work right in their office. So they become their employee. They help with intake of new cases to determine whether or not they're good cases to take on. They help with locating experts while working for the firm. Legal nurse consultants are also hired by insurance companies and work right within the insurance industry. And then there are other people such as myself who determine that we want to be independent. We want to have our own company. We want to be our own boss. And we either want to work for plaintiff, defense, or both. Then we decide how much of a niche we want. Do we only want to take OB cases? Do we only want to do nursing home cases? Do we only want to help with brain injury cases? So it's quite interesting how big and how far it goes. And then it gets boiled down even further. You have those that are consulting. So that's all the behind the scenes work that we just talked about. Or there's also the legal nurse consultant who works as an expert witness. And as an expert witness, then you are retained to give testimony as to whether or not the standard of care was met in a case. If you feel as a nurse that you want to be a legal nurse, there are numerous opportunities and ways that you can meet that actual term, legal nurse consultant.
When you just practiced as a nurse, did you feel an inner legal? Did you always know that was a route you wanted to go? Or did it kind of pop up at one moment?
I knew I was going to be a nurse since I was in second grade. In second grade, they ask you at career day what you want to be. I said, I'm going to be a nurse. And I always knew it. But when I was 17, I also got interested in being a paralegal. And so I was torn between the two. And then decided, no, I'm just going to stay on the path of nursing. That's what I want to do. But always drawn to the John Grisham books and Perry Mason and Matlock. And I know I'm dating myself, okay?
No, my mom loves all those.
Yeah, I'm into suits too. So the whole law side was very interesting to me. So after doing healthcare administration and just still feeling like, okay, what more is there? I am not going to stay in administration the rest of my career. I mean, thank God for those that do, but it's a lot. And you always feel like you're not making, for me anyway, you felt like you couldn't make the difference that you wanted to. And so by having my own company and working with great attorneys, I'm fulfilling my role as a nurse by helping other people. And also, there's no ceiling. I can choose whatever this looks like, part-time, full-time. This attorney, not so great to work with. You know what? We're going to redirect. I don't have to work with you again. In healthcare, you don't have that opportunity, right? And I can tell you that all my clients that I have are wonderful to work with and they're repeat clients, right? But I mean, I'm just saying you have more opportunity than you do when you work in a hospital setting.
I imagine you also get incredible patience working with clients, having worked with patients in a medical setting.
Yes. And really what is one of the hardest things for nurses when they enter into legal nurse consulting is really realizing it's a totally different world for how slow it is. So in healthcare, everything is fast. Everything. Communication is there 100%. So if I ask a doctor a question, I expect an answer within 15 minutes to half an hour at the most, so that I can treat his patient appropriately. Nurse to nurse conversations, or even nurse to lab, nurse to radiology, there's that instant feedback because we are taking care of patients. And so we're used to things being quick. Whereas when you become a legal nurse consultant, the law does not move fast. Things stretch out. So you get a case from an attorney. And I remember thinking when I first started, I have not heard from this man for a week. Did I upset him? What's going on? And now when new legal nurses come in, I'll say, you know what? It's okay. If you've not heard back in 2 weeks, that's, summer, he might be in trial, or she might have other situations that she's dealing with. So I don't get all excited like I used to and concerned about it. But new nurses entering into our field, that's one thing that they say, I haven't heard anything. How come they haven't gotten back to me? Because you're now a legal nurse consultant. You're not in the hospital. Totally different way of communicating.
Now, those cases definitely move at a different pace. When someone is looking at enlisting a legal nurse, how does that impact the outcome of healthcare related cases?
Well, I think that we add a lot to a case because of our background and our knowledge. So, for instance, one attorney who has been practicing law for years, and he had not used a legal nurse consultant in 10 years. And he had a really difficult case. And it had actually been given to him by another attorney who had started it. And he said, Jackie, I need you. I found your website and I really want your input into this case. And I said, okay, it was a difficult case, but I was able to show him a lot of things that he did not see at first glance with that case, and ideas on, okay, this is what we found. Now, this is what I recommend, what kind of experts to bring in, how this could impact his case. I was able to give him insight from the medical world that he did not have. So it broadened his perspective and gave him the tools he needed to fight for his client. And now that attorney continues to send me cases because he sees the value in it.
I think you just touched on it, but can you help us delve a little more into those specific advantages legal nurse consultants offer that attorneys don't necessarily have at their disposal by themselves?
Well, I think that they do have the disposal to themselves. Anyone can look up lab values. Anybody can, nowadays you can look anything up. You can even ask AI something, right? And get the answer. But what we have is the critical thinking from the years of being in the field. You might be able to read a lab result, or you might be able to say, okay, I've read about this surgery. But we're able to take it a step further and say, yes, you read about that surgery, but the way they position that patient is not what we normally would do. And that's why the patient was burned. Those are examples where, yes, you can read about it, but we've actually been there. We've done it. We give the critical thinking piece to the attorney that they don't necessarily have. So just like I know just a little bit about the law, enough to talk to them about certain things, they know just enough about healthcare. So we help educate them on the scenarios that they're dealing with and really give them perspective and help direct them the way that they should go. So if we run into a case where a patient had a bad outcome, I'm just going to use surgery because I spent a lot of time in surgery. Surgery is behind closed doors. Very few people get the opportunity to even see what happens in surgery. It's not like going up to the floor where you can visit somebody in their room. And so you might have a case where the patient had a really bad outcome on the table. But we're able to look at it and say, but you know what? There was no breach in the standard of care. Sometimes things happen, but it doesn't necessarily mean that there was a breach in that standard of care. Now, that attorney can look up that procedure. That attorney can get an idea of how it should go or why it should go a certain way. But we've been in the operating room, and so we can talk to him step by step about the process that occurs and what that looks like. And that gives them more of the tools that they need to fight for their clients.
That's a great point. So when you're actually getting into preparing and analyzing cases for attorneys, what does that process look like? What's sort of the nitty-gritty there?
So they will send over all of the records that they have. And what's important is a lot of times they will think that they have all the records. They will request by certified set of medical records, and we'll get those records and they're still not complete. We know they're not complete because we know what to look for. And so we'll say, you know what, you're still missing XYZ, which are very important for this case. And then they'll go back and ask for them. And so first and foremost, we look to ensure that we have all the medical records. Then we actually will go through the medical records and pinpoint what the issue is. So let's say we get 10 years of records, but the case happened 5 years into the care of the patient. We're not going to spend a lot of time looking at the first 5 years. What we are going to do is look at the history that we have within the time frame of when the incident occurred. And then if need be, if we need to correlate something, then we can go back further with the records that they gave us to say, this happened 3 years earlier, it had a direct impact in this way. So we spend a lot of time making sure we have the records, all that we need. Then from there, reviewing, analyzing, seeing what the standard of care, if it was met or not met. Then some attorneys just want us to give them a verbal opinion. So we call them up and we tell them what we found. And they say, thank you, locate an expert for us, or, okay, thank you, go ahead and write a report for us. We want it in writing. So depending on what they say determines what we do next. Other clients that I have just automatically want a full report. They want it very detailed. And so I just go ahead and start writing the report. So it's just very good to have a lot of open communication as to what exactly they want and what is going to meet their need. Because our goal, my goal as a legal nurse consultant, is to make their life easier. They have to take care of this client. And so what can I do to make it the easiest way for them? And that is to find out what works best for them in their learning and in helping them with their lawsuit.
You're managing so many different aspects. So, and you kind of touched on this already, but can you clarify for us the different roles a legal nurse consultant has? Because you're definitely wearing many different hats.
Depending on what you decide you want to do with your role. For me, I work both as a consultant, so behind the scenes, where I review a lot of cases to determine whether there was merit for medical malpractice, as well as also doing personal injury cases where, somebody was in a car accident. So I'm looking at that case for the attorney. But then I also have clients who use me as an expert witness to testify on cases. So they're two completely different roles. One is behind the scenes. I'll do work that is not discoverable. That's a consultant. Whereas a testifying expert, what we do is discoverable. It goes before the court. So there are two different ways that you can assist attorneys that way. Then I also, because I own a company, I also have people that work with me in different fields such as life care planning. So I'm not a life care planner, but I have clients who, let's say that I help them with this very difficult car accident case. And we know that this person is going to have many needs in the future, then they will retain the services of the certified life care planner, who is a registered nurse who has gone back to school, become certified to look at reasonable costs and future medical costs for these people. And then they write information and reports that go to the attorney to help them even further in the case. It's multidimensional what you can do in the role of a legal nurse consultant. There are others who say, no way, I'm going to keep working at the hospital, but I'll work as an expert witness. I just want to testify. And so that's what they do. They'll take 5 cases a month and they'll just do testifying work. So it's really about what fits your needs and what you want to do as a nurse.
So to clarify, in your case and just in general, what does the overlap look like between expert testimony and the consulting side? And is there overlap, or is it usually one or the other? And for you also?
For me, there's overlap. So I might have an attorney who will say, I want you to consult on this case. And I'll look at it and I'll call him up and I'll say, I know you really wanted me to consult on it, but I think I'd be a really good testifying expert for you. And here are the reasons why. And so before I even write the report, I'll have that conversation and then they'll either agree or disagree and we go forward with me in the expert role. Other ways that it overlaps is, Jackie, we want you to look at this in the consulting role. I will do it. And then I'll say, I think that you could use XYZ as an expert. And they say, oh, that's a great idea. And so my company will also then hire or locate experts for them that can be retained. So there's a lot of overlap as far as what we offer and how we assist attorneys in cases.
How vital is that expert nurse testimony when it comes to legal proceedings?
It's extremely important. There are certain things that you have to stay within your realm of practice, your scope of practice. So registered nurse cannot opine, give opinion on something that a nurse practitioner did. A nurse cannot give opinion on something that a physician did. When you're an expert witness, you have to stay within the scope of your practice. So as an RN, what would anyone else that is reasonable and prudent do if they were in your shoes as a nurse? So that as an expert, that's what you're looking for. What would a reasonable, prudent person do in the shoes of the person that you are looking at? So let's say I'm looking at an operating room nurse. She's circulating a case. I have to determine whether or not what she did deviated from the standard of care. As the expert witness, I say to the attorney, this is where she deviated in the standard of care. I would not be somebody that would be able to say, as an expert witness, this is how the surgeon deviated from the standard of care. I couldn't do that because I'm not a surgeon. So it's very important that as an expert witness, you stay within your realm, your scope of practice. And attorneys are really good about, knowing that about you, but sometimes there are even more nuances. So I've never practiced in the ICU. As an expert witness, I am not going to testify as to the standard of care that an ICU nurse did or did not do. I've never worked there. And the things that they deal with, I would not know how to do. Now, there are a few exceptions. Some things, no matter where you work, you can, as an expert, give opinion on because you're a nurse. And as a nurse, there are some things that are nursing 101, such as medication administration. No matter where you work, you have to follow the same rules for medication administration. You have to know your patient. You have to double check your patient. You have to double check your medication. You have to ensure that you're giving the right dose in the right route at the right time. No matter where you work, that is universal. Even though I don't work in a certain area of a hospital, if there was a medication error and I read the actual account of the scenario, I would be able to say to this attorney, it's up to you if you feel comfortable or not, but there was this medication administration error, and that is outside the way that we should be doing it. It does not meet the standard of care for medication administration. And in some roles, I will become the expert anyway because I was in administration. So, even if the attorney feels, well, you know what, you never worked in that department. Because I worked in administration, I had to sign off on all the policies and procedures on how we gave medication. So it's covered then by that other role. It's very interesting, Matt, but it can also be boring if you're not in our field. But you can tell if you do this, you get excited about it.
Well, it's definitely a lot to keep track of for sure. I mean, you're managing so many nuances and so many complexities. I think that takes me to my next question, which is how do you, in a broad sense, help prepare attorneys when it comes to going to trial? What goes into that process?
So it depends on the relationship that you have with the attorney. I have one attorney that I work quite closely with that has used me from reviewing his cases. He's a medical malpractice attorney. So he'll have me review the cases behind the scenes, see if there's deviation in the standard of care. If there is, help locate his experts. Then once we locate the experts, he will have me help him with deposition questions. And are there certain things that he may not see that I think are important that he should be asking or be concerned about? Then he's also had me help with demonstrative evidence. So things like charts, items that he can use if this case were to go to court. He has used me to review depositions he took of opposing counsel's experts to see if there was anything within those depositions that stood out and what we should do about it. And then he's also had me work as a focus group moderator. So knowing that we have cases that are going to go to trial or are scheduled for trial, bringing in people that could be the next jury and actually presenting to them questions and in an open manner so that we can read where the weaknesses are in the case versus the strengths in the case. And then that helps us also prepare for trial because we know what we need to work on. So from the moment that a case comes in until actually through trial, we can assist attorneys in numerous ways.
And how do attorneys decide upon that cost-benefit analysis of whether or not to hire a legal nurse consultant for any given case?
For some, I've heard this. Some have had bad experiences, and so they've tried a nurse once and it didn't work out, so they say never again. And that's unfortunate because if you have a situation like that, it's like anything else. So, you know what? Try one, find one that you really like. And once you like that person, stick with them because you get to have a really good flow with them. And once you understand them and they understand you and your needs, they actually make your life so much easier. That saves you time. It saves you time. You're not having to worry about, oh, I have to locate an expert that fits this need, or am I sure that this case has merit, or what am I missing? I don't know what I'm missing in this case. And so you bring on a legal nurse consultant where you get that really good relationship with them and you trust them and you know where they're coming from. It just makes your life so much simpler. You're able to not worry about things. You're able to say, you know what, the money is worth it because I'm able to concentrate more on this portion of the case. Or, you know what, they brought this to my attention, so now I know exactly what to work on. So for many that are doing big cases, they'll say, and a lot of my clients say, you know what, this is why we keep coming back, because we know what we're getting and we know how much time it's saving us and that you're showing us things that we wouldn't have normally seen. What
are some green flags a lawyer should look for, and how do you effectively collaborate? What's the difference between good collaboration and bad collaboration here?
Well, good collaboration, I think, is, first of all, you have to know how the other person communicates. So I always assess what kind of communicator they are. Do they want to be called? Do they want to just work through the paralegal? Do they want to use email the most? What works for them? And then being accommodating. My goal is to make their life easier. So what does communication look like to them? And so together we learn how to communicate best. Where you don't have good communication is when you're not getting the notices you need. So, for instance, as an expert witness, usually the attorney will spend time prepping you for trial or prepping you for deposition, ensuring that you feel prepared, that any questions that you have are answered. At times, just due to the nature of things, that doesn't always happen. When that doesn't always happen, nurses can tend to say, do I want to put myself in that position again? I did not get the communication I needed before going to trial or before a deposition. That is kind of where communication needs to be the best. And that might put a caution on whether or not they work together again. But as far as consulting is concerned, you really learn if you're a good fit or not. I actually have had a few clients where we worked together on 2 or 3 cases and it just didn't jive. For whatever reason, it didn't jive. But I have a friend, a very good friend, who's a legal nurse consultant, who I said, you know what? I think she would be a really good fit for you. And so I gave them her contact information. And so I'm not afraid to do that because the idea is you want to help as many people as possible. So I'm not worried about losing business. If you're out doing it for the right reasons, then it is to help people. And you know what you give out comes back to you. So I want there to be good fits with people. So sometimes personalities just don't mesh. And so you just realize that and you learn how to accommodate them in a different way.
Yeah, it's funny how you can technically work well together on paper, but then there's always that emotional flow component to everything as well. When you're working with your clients, what are the most common misconceptions?
I don't really have to correct them on much, except, I will say that in general, when trying to work with attorneys, because my clients really, I have a really good group of clients. I am very happy with who I work with. But there are those where I'm trying to work with them, or I would like to work with them, and they have this misconception that, I'll bring something up and they'll say, oh yeah, and they'll just poo-poo it. That's good, but it's not for us. Or, you know what, we go straight to a physician. Or, okay, that's fine. By the way, we work in tandem with physicians. It's not one or the other. We work in tandem with it. But sometimes attorneys think that they're going to save money by going straight to an expert and bypass using a consultant in the background. Or we will just have a physician look at this rather than a nurse. The thing is that with nurses, we know the inner workings of the hospital and how things occur a lot of times better than some physicians, only because of the role that we have, right? We're with the patient 24/7, whereas the doctors are coming in, assessing them, relying on what the nurses tell them. We work in tandem with them. So a lot of times it's like, you know what, if you just work with physicians, I'm fine with that. But if you ever feel the need where you want something that maybe is a little more in depth or a different viewpoint, then that's when you can come to us. So I think that those I work with, there's not that issue. It's just new people that you always want to grow your consulting business, where you're trying to show them the benefits of it. And the benefits of it are, we know the standards of care for nursing. We know the inner workings of a facility. We know how to locate those experts for you. And really, it's about your comfort level with the nurse consultant that you're working with, whether or not that's a good fit. And once you find one that you have a good fit with, they usually stick with you for years. Most of my clients have been with me since I started.
Can you share us an example of where serving as a legal nurse consultant has made all the difference in terms of outcomes?
Well, I think I shared a little bit on the first episode of a case where he was actually a new client to me. It was the first case we'd ever worked together, and he had just retained me to locate experts for him. And in this case, he really thought he had a good case. He really did. But some things he was telling me, it just didn't make sense. And, we kind of have these spidey senses. We know what we're doing. And I said, you know what, just send me those records. Something does not feel right with what you're telling me. I know you think you have a case. So he sent me the records and I said, what you've been looking at, you do not have all the records. It looks like you have a case right now, but you're not looking at the full records. So when he sent me the records that were missing, every situation where he thought he had a case, that this case had merit and where things had gone wrong, I located it in the records that he did not originally have. And I said, look, defense is going to kill you here. Defense, every single thing that he had showed where the standard of care had been met, even though there was a bad outcome. The standard of care had been met. And I said, defense is going to, they will win. Hands down, they will win this case. And so he was so thankful for that. He did not realize the vastness of this situation. And so since then, I work with him on multiple different cases to help him. And he's very thankful for it. In other scenarios, able to kind of find the smoking gun, so to speak. So you think that, you're going along reading this case and you think, no, I haven't found anything here for a medical malpractice case. And all of a sudden, boom, there it is. Whatever that may be, it happens quite often where we'll just find that one piece that just puts the puzzle together for the attorney and it gives them the direction they need for their case. I plan in the future, Matt, to actually bring one of my clients on, and we're going to go through one of our cases that we won. I'll be interviewing him in the future, and we'll be delving into that. And so then people can hear the attorney perspective on it.
So as we wrap up this episode, you were mentioning, the future. And so I'm curious, what are the future trends you see when it comes to legal nurse consultants in the legal field?
Well, there's definitely a need for us. So I think that we are just going to continue to find ways to be useful and more useful to attorney clients. Right now, a lot of us are learning ways to incorporate AI into our world so that what we deliver to them is actually more efficient, but still has the critical thinking piece involved, which right now AI does not have the critical thinking, does not have the background that we have. So it's going to be imperative for nurses to get on board with being very good with AI and finding ways to make their lives easier and more efficient so that the cost does not become astronomical for attorneys.
Awesome. That's a great point to wrap up on. Everybody, thank you so much for watching the CenterPoint Podcast with Jacquelyn Maki. Be sure to like and subscribe. You can find her also at CenterPointConsultingLLC.com. Jackie, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Matt.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.